So, how do you convince someone that an embryo or a fetus is a human being with the right to life just like you and I have? It's really easy if you follow the science. Hi, I'm Chuck Livermore. I'm a Christian author and speaker, and in this video, I want to show you that unborn babies are human beings using the science of embryology. So, we're finally to the point in this YouTube series where we're able to answer the question, what is the unborn? Now that we've established that there's only one question that is the key to the morality of abortion, we can answer that question. The science of embryology shows us what the answer is. Now, there are sub-questions under that main question, and the first question is, at what point in the pregnancy does the organism become a human being? Now, scientists can answer that question with pretty impressive consistency. According to S.A. Jacobs in the article, The Scientific Consensus on When a Human Life Begins, the issue is settled. Now, this article states, and I'm reading here, peer-reviewed journals in the biological and life science literature have published the articles that represent the biological view that a human life begins at fertilization, the fertilization view. The article continues, biologists from 1,058 academic institutions around the world assess survey items on when a human life begins, and overall 96%, that's 5,337 out of 5,577, affirm that the fertilization view is the correct one. Now, this article contrasts the statistics of scientists and academics with that of the general public. Only 38% of the general public thinks that life begins at fertilization. Now, this article was from the National Institute of Health. That's not really known to be a pro-life organization. Now, embryology teaches us three things about what begins at fertilization. The science says that an unborn baby is a living organism, that it has its own body distinct from its mother, and that it's part of the human species. Now, first, let me show you that the unborn baby is alive from the moment the conception process is complete. You might remember from your grade school health class that living organisms have three characteristics, and we see each of these in an embryo. An unborn baby grows like all living things. It responds to stimuli, and also it metabolizes nutrients. Now, secondly, the unborn shows that it has a body distinct from the mother's body. It's not like the woman's tonsils that can be cut out and discarded. Now, first thing that shows that the baby is distinct is the unborn baby has a unique set of fingerprints. Fingerprints have been used for decades to solve crimes because every individual has a unique set, and that's true with a baby as well. Also, the unborn baby has a unique DNA. When the sperm and the ovum combine together to create a new human being, it takes the DNA from the male and the DNA from the female and creates a new DNA from those two. And so that's another way that we know that the unborn baby is distinct from the mother. And finally, the unborn baby has its own unique organs. It has its own heart, its own brain. Its circulatory system is also unique to the baby. Now, that's the science. So let me tell you a story here that shows that a baby is distinct from its mother. A baby's circulatory system is completely separate from the mother. The baby's blood type may even be different than the mother's. A baby and its mother's blood vessels will pass very close to each other, which allows nutrients to pass from the mother to the baby and also waste product from the baby back to the mother. However, the blood of the baby and the blood of the mother never mix. Now, if something happened that injured the mother and the baby, and their blood became mingled, the mother's body would recognize that this was not part of her body and would reject the baby as a foreign entity and try to expel it as an invasive organism. And now, another thing is an embryo can be created in a laboratory and later implanted into a mother's uterus. Science understands how to create a baby outside of the woman's body from materials harvested from a male and a female. However, in order to grow the baby to full term, we still must have a female host. This is simply more evidence that the baby's body is distinct from the mother and is not just a part of the mother's body. Now that we've determined that an embryo is a living organism distinct from its mother, we must answer another question. What kind of organism or being is it? Is an embryo a human being, or is it some other type of being? Now, you may remember seeing a drawing like this in your biology textbook in high school. This drawing was done by a German scientist by the name of Ernst Haeckel. He presented this as an argument for Darwinian evolution. Haeckel wanted to show that the embryos of various creatures go through the same evolutionary process in the womb, and they only change into their unique structure in the later stages of development. He argued that all embryos, including human embryos, go through the stages where they had gill slit like fish or tails like monkeys. Haeckel made his drawing to show how all the mammals look alike in their primary stages. They diverge as they develop further in the womb. The problem is that other scientists disputed Haeckel's findings and showed vast differences in embryos from the outset. Apparently, Haeckel had faked his drawings, make his argument that Darwinian evolution was correct. Now, back in Haeckel's day, of course, they didn't have AI to produce deep fakes, so he used his artistic talent to manipulate his own drawing. Now, just because coffee makers have certain design elements in common, their individual features give them different functions. Some will only brew a cup of coffee at a time. Others will make a full craft of coffee. Some will make only hot drinks. Others will make both hot and cold. And some may make lattes and cappuccinos. Others only drip coffee. In biological animals, their differences outweigh their similarities. Now, there are two ways to know that unborn babies are human beings from the moment that they are conceived. Now, Haeckel's drawings were ridiculous. You never had a human embryo that would come out as a fish or a hog or a rabbit. They always come out as humans. Now, there are two ways that we can know that a fetus is a human being. First, we can test its DNA. If you were to go into the uterus of a pregnant woman and take a tissue sample from the fetus, you would be able to test it and find out that its DNA is completely human. Secondly, and this is probably a more practical way of determining, you can just look at its parents. According to biogenesis, beings always produce after their own kind or species. You don't say to your spouse, honey, we've already had 2 babies. Why don't we try for a puppy this time? Now, scientists declare that life begins at fertilization. Here's some testimonies that we have found in embryology textbooks. This first one is from a textbook called Before We Are Born, The Essentials of Embryology and Birth Defects, 7th edition. It's written by 2 doctors named Moore and Prasad. Here's the quote, I'll read it. Human development begins at fertilization when the oocyte, or the ovum, from a female is fertilized by the sperm, or the spermatozoon, from a male and becomes a single-celled zygote. In another embryology textbook by the name of Human Development, The Span of Life, written by Kaluger and Kaluger, says this: in that fraction of a second when the chromosomes form pairs, the sex of the new child will be determined, hereditary characteristics received from each parent will be set, and a new life will have begun. Now here's another quote from a scientist named Dr. Maureen Kondik. She's the Associate Professor of Neurobiology and an adjunct professor of pediatrics at the University of Utah School of Medicine. Here's what she says. The conclusion that human life begins at sperm-egg fusion is uncontested, based on ample scientific evidence. thousands of independent peer-reviewed publications. Moreover, it is entirely independent of any specific ethical, moral, political, or religious view of human life or of human embryos. Now, we even have quotes from abortion rights advocates that agree on what the procedure of abortion actually does to a human being. Here's a quote from Anne Ferretti, who is the chief executive of BPAS, that's the largest abortion provider in the United Kingdom. She says, "We can accept that the embryo is a living thing in the fact that it has a beating heart and it has its own genetic system within it. It's clearly human in the sense that it's not a gerbil, and we can recognize that it is a human life of a sort. But the point really is not when does human life begin, but when does it really begin to matter?" Also, here's a quote from Faye Walton. She's the former president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. She was their president from 1978 to 1992. And in an article entitled Speaking Frankly from Miss Magazine in 1997, she said this: "I think we have deluded ourselves into believing that people don't know that abortion is killing. So any pretense that abortion is not killing is a signal of ambivalence, a signal that we cannot say, yes, it kills a fetus." So abortion advocates not only believe that this is killing, they say we should loudly proclaim that. Now, early on in its development, a baby in the womb will have arms and legs and a face just like a baby that has already been born. Abortion horrifically mutilates the baby by just tearing it apart. But even in cases of pregnancy less than a few weeks, when the embryo doesn't yet have a body that looks like a baby, it still is. That's just what a human baby looks like in the early stages of development. A baby only a week old will resemble a soccer ball as the single cell starts to split and multiply. However, it is still a human being. Now, a tadpole and an adult frog look very different from each other, but they are both frogs at different stages of development. A caterpillar and a butterfly show very little resemblance, but they are the same insect, just at different stages. Now, according to a Pew Research poll, only 35% of Americans agree with this statement. Human life begins at conception, so the embryo is a person with rights. But the scientific consensus is 96% of scientists believe that human life begins at conception. In the next video, I want to give you the logical argument that shows that abortion is an immoral act. I also want to explain how the unborn is deprived of its humanity, just like the Jews during the Holocaust or African slaves before the Civil War. They're just not considered human, and there's a Holocaust with unborn babies that's similar to these two acts of incredible racism and prejudice. Now, if this video has been helpful to you, I ask that you would give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to discuss these issues, leave a comment in the comment section and we will respond to that and discuss these issues further. So thank you for watching today, and may you always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have in Jesus Christ.